Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, number 12. This is from 1992, and you can already tell by the cover the times they were a-changin'. I don't know if Gilbert Shelton was going through a midlife crisis, if he was depressed, but man, this cover is bleak. It is not a typical Freak Brothers cover. Usually their covers are zany madcap antics and good times, and you know, this is not that. They're in this squat. Franklin is cooking a rat for dinner. Freddy's sadly looking out the window with a blanket wrapped around him for warmth, and Phineas looks pretty mopey just reading this book. There's roaches everywhere. It's kind of a nice painting, though. By the way, this is Shelton solo. Kind of interesting. In this comic, there's a bunch of stories where Gilbert Shelton is just drawing everything. And he hasn't done that in decades. You know, in the 70s, he had Dave Sheridan as his assistant. Then as soon as he died, Paul Mavridis stepped in. So this is like some of the first stuff he's drawn solo since his early days in the Undergrounds. And still looks good, but it's definitely different, you know. Because even the Shelton Mavridis stuff in here, it does seem like they've kind of retreated from their the past 5 issues. Every issue, they got more ambitious with the art, more detailed, just trying all this new stuff. And this one is pretty much just like, I don't know, it's like the old Feds and Heads comic or something. You know, it's definitely more accomplished than that was. He's definitely grown as a cartoonist, but it is kind of making everything simple, you know, going back to basics. Inside front cover, we have The Adventures of Fat Freddy, just a one-page gag strip. Look at the faces here. Just, Shelton hasn't drawn this cartoony in so long. I don't know if Mavridis would always, you know, change the art a little when he inked it, but this is just a, you know, fun, goofy little gag and just drawn just pretty cartoonily simply, even though it's got plenty of cross-hatching and shading and stuff. But so the first story we have is Red Hot Squat, and we see the image from the cover. This is different, though. It's not like he just took this and colored it. There's definitely some differences where he redrew this for the cover. For example, Phineas is reading an IKEA catalog showing the change in times, and also showing how poor they are. That's all he has to read as a free catalog. This is Solo by Gilbert Shelton. And except for the story, it says GVI. And even Comics Joint website didn't know who GVI was. And that guy knows his Underground, so it might be a mystery lost to time, this GVI character. So it starts off, Freak Brothers are in one of their many apartments. It's San Francisco in the 90s, so they're paying too much. They're going broke. And they see an ad. The apartment building across the street is selling for $1.5 million, and it hasn't been rented out in a long time. So Franklin says, the place is empty. Let's squat there. I got this book all about squatting. So they take all their stuff over there. They brick up the first story windows and front door. They leach electricity off the nearest power cable, turn on the gas themselves, and turn on the water down in the basement. So they've got this basically palatial estate for nothing. And they're really happy with themselves. They're like, this is great. It's an urban paradise. Until one day, a giant wrecking ball demolishes most of the building. And one of the workers tells the other workers, says, call the cops. We got some squatters here. Because it's against the law, of course. Just lots of nice, even without any assistance, Gilbert Shelton still puts in a lot of nice, you know, sweat equity, if you will. He's really working, doing this shading and stuff, drawing all the rubble. So basically just ends with them. After they get released by the cops, they're homeless again. Once again, they got to look for an apartment. Pretty nice story. Another one-pager of Fat Freddy. This one's once again solo by Gilbert Shelton. And just a little funny gag. Not that funny. Cute. It's a cute gag. Next, I think this is a first. Norbert the Narc gets his own comic, Fraud and Fulfillment. And now we got Shelton and Mavrides. So, Norbert's, he's a dick. And so he's just really bothered watching these people on a welfare line he's saying to himself, oh man, they're probably all drug addicts. We should at least have urine testing if you want welfare, to make sure you're not on drugs. Because heaven forbid you're poor and you want to escape reality, your shitty life for a little while. This is a real thing in the 90s. There were a bunch of congressmen saying we should have urine testing for all food stamp and welfare recipients. So he says, I'm going to get a law passed. And he goes to Congress, and this is some good political satire. He meets these congressmen, and they're just like, sure, we'll pass any law if you pay us enough, as long as we're exempt from it. So Norbert drains his life savings, and the law is passed. Look at that, very old school Gilbert Shelton, like zany, cartoony. Because Norbert hasn't looked like this in a while. He's kind of been drawn more realistically. Meanwhile, Freddy is broke once again, and he decides to go get some welfare. He gets urine tested, and he turns it in. Of course, it's not going to pass. He's a freak brother. He's Freddy. So he tells them his name is Norbert, though, when they ask his name. And pretty soon, the FBI show up at Norbert's office, and they throw him in the clink because he's a policeman who failed his urine test, or so they think. And it looks like he's there for a long time. He's got this long beard. Oh, poor Norbert. He can't catch a break. Got this little 2-pager here by Shelton and Mavrides. Basically, the gag is that Phineas is growing some mushroom spores. Apparently, they're very sensitive to any contaminant. And of course, Freddy sticks his finger in it because he's impatient. Look at that. That's very Mavrides to me. That's an amazing, weird little spore or a fungus. So, the Freak Brothers return from a music festival. They've been gone for a few days. And they see these mutated mushrooms oozing out of the windows. And the next day, there's a newspaper headline, "The city's overrun. Mutant psychedelic fungus overrun the city." So everyone's tripping. They're hallucinogenic. I'm annoyed that the story ends here, because this could have been a fun little Freak Brothers adventure. Like them in this crazy sci-fi, post-apocalyptic San Francisco, and the adventures they could have gotten into. This next one is a Shelton and Mavrides jam. And this is once again showing the tenor of the times. They talk about the Rodney King beating, because Phineas just got beat up by cops just for videotaping them, fucking with a black guy. And so interesting that even though the Freak Brothers barely change, they're almost timeless, the world around them continues to keep on trucking on. But having said that, it is interesting in this issue, you actually do see that the Freak Brothers are these aging old hippies. Gilbert Sheldon realizes the times have changed. They survived the 80s, and now it's the 90s, and they're still themselves. But the world has moved on, and they're these old hippies. And we see this in the story by Shelton and Mavrides, where Freddy is talking to these young punks as if he's the wise old elder, telling the kids about the days of being a hippie in the 60s and what they used to do when they got raided by the cops. The little trick they did is they just throw all their stuff out the window, all their drugs. And then as soon as the cops left, they'd go outside and get the drugs again. And I like how they're listening to the Sex Pistols, because all these young kids are kind of weird punk rockers. So as they leave, they seem very polite. They're like, "Thank you, Mr. Freakowski. Thanks for letting us listen to your antique music tapes and for hanging out with us." A few minutes later, they hear a loud banging on the door, This is the police. So the Freak Brothers do what they do. They throw all their drugs out the window. And then when they open the door, there's no one there. And they think for a second, they're like, oh man. So they run out to the backyard and all the drugs are gone. Those little punk kids planned the whole thing so they could steal their drugs. Classic. This next one is a Gilbert Shelton solo, story by GVI, the mysterious GVI. And Phineas and Freddie are tagging. I guess they're getting into graffiti art. That's just a little 2-page gag. I like the cartooning in this one. I really like that logo. Another 1-page Fat Freddy comic. Solo Gilbert Shelton again. Just a goofy gag. Now we got a little bigger story. The Treasure of the Frigo Helado by Shelton and Mavrides. So one day Freddy's watching a documentary about the Antarctic explorers, kind of bemoaning the fact that there's nowhere left to explore. And he gets up to get some food, and the fridge, of course, is empty, as it usually is. So he cracks open the freezer, which is frozen over, and he decides to chip at it and find if there's any food in there hiding, kind of defrost the freezer. And he finds some weird stuff in a Tupperware. He's like, it's food. And he eats it. And then we see him look a little dazed. And all of a sudden, he starts fantasizing that he's in the Antarctic. It almost feels like he's been transported there. He sees the northern lights, or the polar lights. Pretty beautiful. Good drawing. And he's trudging through. He's burning his comic books for heat. He sees some sort of dinosaur frozen under the ice. That's how he sees it, but we can obviously see it's a giant chicken. And then his fire opens up some subterranean river, and Freddy's going to drown in it. But he takes his pickaxe and breaks through the ground, trying to find like like Pellucidar, like the center of the earth. And we can tell it's obviously a fantasy, like he's riding on a popsicle. But he makes it. It's a total like almost like Paleolithic world, jungle. It's warm down there. But there's all these surreal touches. There's a giant can of tuna fish. And this giant roach comes up to him. And all of a sudden, Freddy turns into Conan. He's got a knife, and he lunges at the cockroach and starts killing it. I like this panel where Freddy's freaking out. He's just massacring this roach. This princess comes out of nowhere, and she's like, Freddy, oh, Freddy. But as she's trying to get his attention, she's changing. Her nose is getting bigger. Her chin is getting more pronounced. And Freddy wakes up. It's Franklin. He turns into Franklin. Oh, she turns into Franklin. And he says, what are you doing? You've ruined the refrigerator. And Phineas starts wailing on him with a rolled up newspaper. He's like, you ate all of my mushrooms that were stored in the freezer, you motherfucker. And all the coolant is leaked out. So, and then it says, not yet the end. And we turn the page and we get an epilogue. So we find out when Freddy was defrosting the freezer, all the Freon, which had been sealed inside, escaped into the atmosphere. Freddy exhaled it with no harm, and it went all the way up to the stratosphere and punched a hole through the cloud cover, the ozone layer. Look at that. I bet that's Mavrides' crazy, like some monster of Freon. So all these ultraviolet rays begin to pour through in unimaginable quantities. Soon everything on Earth is dead except for Freddy. And he says, oh, these UV rays are starting to affect my brain. The glazed metallic sky above the once green Earth seems to be perforated with tiny holes. See it there? And then it looks like Freddy's succumbing to the radiation. And then we see the last panel Once again, it's another little fantasy. Franklin's like, good God, what is he doing now? And Phineas is like, get your head out of the microwave oven. It won't turn on with the door open anyway, you idiot. I like that how, the tops of the old microwaves used to have those little holes. Very odd story, but fun. Got another little 2-pager by Shelton, solo. This one's a pretty good gag. Phineas makes this invention where it's an exercise bike hooked up to the TV. The only power the TV can run on is from the exercise bike. So if you want to keep watching TV, you got to keep riding your bike. And Phineas and Franklin go out for a night in the town, and Freddy says, I'm just going to stay home. And when they come home, they think he's OD'd. He's collapsed on the floor. And when the ambulance comes, they say, total exhaustion, apparently caused by too much exercise. And that doesn't sound like Fat Freddy. And they look at the TV guide, and Franklin says, this explains everything. He was trying to watch the all-night XXX Pornothon on Channel 69. So I guess he was so into the porn, he couldn't stop writing, and he exhausted himself. Another Fat Freddy adventure, solo 1-pager by Gilbert Shelton solo here. And look how cartoony this is. He's really just reverting to like his old underground days in style. Just way looser, more cartoony. But still, he can't resist. Look at the just work drawing the tree here. He still loves to illustrate the backgrounds like pretty densely. Next, we have Phineas's Big Show. And this is by Shelton and Mavrides, but written by Gerhard Seyfried. We've seen his name before. He's helped Gilbert Shelton with stories before. And I like this. Phineas is peeking in this gallery show. Just the random mutants and freaks that I have a feeling this is a lot of Mavrides' work. Because they're like weird. They look like they're from a sci-fi movie. I mean, for all I know, maybe in the 90s in San Francisco, people did dress like this. They were these crazy fashionistas who'd go to art galleries looking like they stepped out of a sci-fi movie. I don't know. But it is pretty over the top and kind of fun to look at, all these zany characters. So it's a typical, like crappy modern art thing. So Phineas says, I could do better than that. Gets all these black velvet canvases and starts drawing these abstract paintings. And he's really proud of himself. He's like, I'm pouring my soul onto this black velvet. Now I need a gallery show. So he gets one. And his first night, he's got all this food and cheap wine. So all these weirdos show up. It's definitely not as cheechy as that gallery show he was looking at. This is kind of the lower end of the spectrum. Franklin and Freddy walk in the door with Fat Freddy's cat on his shoulder. And he becomes the centerpiece of the show. All these people go up to the cat. Oh, what a cute cat. And this kind of bothers Phineas. And he starts harassing this art critic. And he's just like, what do you think of my paintings? Tell me. And then right then, Fat Freddy's cat vomits up on the floor. I guess he ate too many hors d'oeuvres. And the art critic says, that's better art than the stuff that's hanging there on the walls. Just look at the texture and composition, that chiaroscuro. Your paintings aren't nearly as good as this cat vomit. So Phineas vomits. I don't know if he does it on purpose to try to make his own vomit art or just he gets sick. Of course, the critic doesn't like his vomit as much. But all of a sudden, these religious fanatics are walking outside and they look in at Phineas's vomit. And they see the face of Jesus Christ in it. I like how his face is made up of the hors d'oeuvres, like a little half-eaten sausage is his mouth, and a black olive and a cucumber wedge. Look at that, though. Speaking of, that's so like Basil Wolverton. Very old school Gilbert Shelton when he was way more cartoony. So the fanatics run in the gallery, and the art critic is like, nothing bothers me more than bad art, except for maybe stupid, ignorant religious fundamentalists. So he stomps the vomit with Jesus' face in it and destroys it. You know, it's really interesting there. Just the body language. I wouldn't even guess this is Gilbert Shelton. This is I don't know. It just has this really nice animated sense of movement that, you know, Shelton's almost a little too belabored for usually. And it looks nice. And then this melee breaks out between the art people and the Christians. That's pretty great panel. But like I said, very loose, very cartoony. Not at all like the Freak Brothers have been drawn for the past, I don't know, 5-6 issues. And so the Freak Brothers sneak out of the gallery and they go home and they look at the only valid form of modern art, comic books. So they finish the story with them tired of this bullshit art, and I agree with them. I'd much rather be reading a good comic book than go to some shitty gallery show. Another one-pager of Fat Freddy by Gilbert Shelton. Another little gag. Once again, very cartoony. Then we got this back cover, and it's Paul Mavrida's solo. I don't think we've ever seen Paul Mavrida's just draw the Freak Brothers without any help. And this is a parody of that popular commercial. It was a public service announcement commercial in the 90s. This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? I've seen so many parodies of this ad over the years, so I don't know if he was one of the earlier ones, but whatever. No matter what the outcome is, it's pretty cliche. And you got to say though, this brain they're standing on, that I would think that was Art Crumb. Just the texture of it, the repulsive, gross textures going on in there. Looks like weirdo era Art Crumb. Well drawn though. Yeah, Paul Mavrida's is good. He's got the goods. So there you have it, guys. The Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, number 12. This is the end of an era. This is actually technically the last Freak Brothers comics ever made, because number 13, which is the last issue of the series, it's all reprints. So 1992, there hasn't been a Freak Brothers comic since then. And this is it. And I don't know, I gotta say, it's kind of like going out with a bang, or going out with a whimper, not a bang. I mean, they're fun little stories, but it seemed like the Freak Brothers were just getting more and more ambitious, story-wise, art-wise, every issue. And this one just seems to be like, I just want to make a fun little underground comic with some gags and whatever. But it's definitely good stuff. You know, Gilbert Shelton, even not bringing his A game. It's just great cartooning, just all around fun. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.